Hello RedCaseStory listeners, welcome back to our channel that discusses true crime stories that really happened around the world. We hope that you are all in good health, kept away from danger, and continue to be surrounded by people who truly care for you. Because as you'll find out in today's story, sometimes the danger isn't from strangers. It's from the people closest to us. Today, we're diving into a chilling case of obsession, deception, and tragedy, a case that began with a lie and ended with 3 members of a loving family brutally murdered in their own home. This is the shocking case of Grant Amato. The Amato family lived in Chuluota, Florida, a small, peaceful community in Seminole County, where everyone knew their neighbors and doors were often left unlocked. Chad and Margaret Amato had raised their 2 sons, Jason and Grant, with love, discipline, and middle-class comfort. Chad was a respected pharmacist, and Margaret worked as an operations manager. They were seen by friends and neighbors as kind, intelligent, and deeply devoted to their sons. Jason, the oldest, was steady and responsible, working hard as a healthcare professional. Grant, the youngest, had always been a bit different. He was smart, no doubt. He attended college and later became a nurse, but beneath the surface, Grant had trouble fitting in. He was introverted, awkward, and struggled with motivation. He was often glued to his computer, gaming, browsing, or chatting online for hours on end. Over time, Grant's behavior grew more troubling. He bounced between jobs, frequently clashed with co-workers, and struggled to hold down responsibilities. Eventually, he was fired from his job at the hospital, accused of stealing vials of propofol, a powerful sedative. Instead of finding a way to get back on track, Grant retreated even further into a digital world, one that would soon consume his every waking moment. It was around this time, mid to late 2018, that Grant discovered a site called MyFreeCams, a live cam platform where users pay to interact with adult models in real time. This is where Grant met Sylvia, a cam model from Bulgaria. To Grant, Sylvia wasn't just a performer. She was beautiful, charming, and most importantly, she responded to him. She called him baby. She listened. She even told him she loved him. Of course, everything she said came with a price. Grant began sending Sylvia thousands of dollars, money he didn't have. At first, it was a few hundred. Then thousands. Then more than $200,000 taken from his parents' retirement funds, his brother's savings, and even maxed out credit cards. His obsession with Sylvia became a full-blown addiction. He spent nearly all day and night online with her. He bought her laundry, sent gifts, and even believed he could one day bring her to America to be with him. His family, heartbroken and furious, confronted him. They gave him an ultimatum: cut off all contact with Sylvia, or leave the house. They tried everything. Counseling, interventions, even sending Grant to a rehab-style retreat for internet addiction, but none of it worked. Grant would pretend to stop, only to secretly sneak back online and continue funneling money to Sylvia. By January 2019, tensions in the household were at a breaking point. On the night of January 24, 2019, everything shattered. What exactly happened inside the Amato home that night may never be fully known. But what investigators pieced together was enough to chill anyone to the bone. Grant's brother Jason didn't show up for work. Neither did his parents. Friends called. Texts went unanswered. Eventually, worried co-workers called police for a wellness check. When deputies arrived at the Amato residence, the front door was locked. All seemed quiet, but inside was a nightmare. Inside, deputies found 3 lifeless bodies. First, Margaret, lying on the kitchen floor, a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Then, Chad, shot execution style in the home office, slumped over in his chair. And finally, Jason, in the garage, face down near the entryway. Each of them had been shot with a 9mm handgun, no sign of forced entry. No robbery, just 3 members of the Amato family. Executed, and Grant, he was nowhere to be found. An APB was issued. Grant Amato was now a person of interest, and possibly the sole survivor of what initially looked like a home invasion gone wrong, but it didn't take long for detectives to put the pieces together. Security footage showed Grant leaving the house in the early morning hours of January 25th. He checked into a cheap motel, where he was later found and brought in for questioning. He appeared calm, cold, almost emotionless. When asked about the murders, Grant denied everything. He claimed he left the house after another argument with his family and didn't know what had happened, but investigators weren't buying it. Back at the crime scene, evidence was piling up: gunpowder residue on Grant's hands, a search history of firearm techniques, an electronic trail that revealed he had been chatting with Sylvia just hours after the murders. And yet, when detectives asked him if he killed his family, Grant replied, "I know how this looks. But I didn't do it." He didn't cry, he didn't ask how they died, he didn't show a single sign of grief, only denial. The discovery of the body sent shockwaves through the Chuluota community. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was unthinkable, a whole family, gone, and the only surviving member, the youngest son, claimed to know nothing, but detectives weren't so sure. They had Grant in custody, and the pressure was mounting. He was their prime suspect. The full interrogation video would later go viral online. Detectives spent nearly 7 hours trying to get Grant to crack. They spoke calmly, firmly, gently, but with growing intensity. They laid out the facts. The gunpowder residue, the digital trail, his secret communications with Sylvia right after the murders, the financial devastation he caused. But Grant remained eerily calm. He never once shed a tear. He offered theories about burglars or an unknown attacker, but he never once asked, "What happened to my family?" As hours passed, Grant's answers became stranger. He claimed he was being set up. He even suggested Jason might have killed their parents in a rage, and then taken his own life. But the evidence told a different story. The 9mm handgun used in the murders, it matched a firearm Grant had access to. His phone pinged near the house at the exact time of the killings, and the computer logs, they showed he had logged into My Free Cams again, just hours after his family was dead. He pleaded not guilty. His defense, that someone else, perhaps a vengeful burglar or an unknown attacker, committed the crimes after Grant had left the house. It was a weak argument. And the prosecution knew it. They came to court armed with surveillance footage, timeline data, expert testimony on blood spatter and residue, and most damning of all, Grant's motive. The prosecution painted a chilling picture. They argued that Grant's obsession with Sylvia, the cam model from Bulgaria, had become his entire reason for living. He stole from his family, he betrayed their trust, he drained their savings, jeopardized their futures, and when they confronted him, when they threatened to cut him off for good, he killed them, not in a fit of rage, but methodically, deliberately, each shot carefully placed, no signs of struggle. No hesitation, just 3 family members, wiped out in minutes. Though she never appeared in court, Sylvia's digital presence loomed large over the trial. The prosecution revealed thousands of messages between Grant and Sylvia, messages in which Grant promised her a future together, lied about being a rich businessman, sent her lingerie, jewelry, and even Bitcoin, and vented about how his family was holding him back. One message read, "They're trying to ruin us, but I won't let them." The courtroom went silent. Friends of the Amato family testified. They spoke of how Chad and Margaret were desperately trying to help their son. Even after everything, they had paid for his rehab, his bills, and even offered him a second chance, but only if he gave up Sylvia. One friend, crying on the stand, said they just wanted him to be okay. But he couldn't let go of that girl. Even Grant's older brother Cody, who had stayed in touch with him, testified about the family's fears. Grant was spiraling, he said, and none of us could stop it. During the trial, the prosecution played the initial 911 call from a co-worker of Jason Amato, who hadn't shown up for his shift. The caller's voice trembled as they said, "He never misses work. I'm really worried. Please, send someone." That call led deputies to the house. To the blood. The silence. The cold bodies, and a missing son. When played in court, you could hear the jury shifting in their seats. It was a reminder that none of this should have happened. The courtroom had fallen into a hush. For weeks, jurors had been listening to hours of testimony, digital logs, expert analysis, photos from the crime scene, even Grant's own cold and calculated responses. Now, they had to decide, was Grant Amato a grieving son or a calculated killer? The prosecution didn't hold back. They described Grant as a man consumed by fantasy, willing to destroy everyone who got in the way of his obsession. "Ladies and gentlemen," the prosecutor said, pointing at the family photo, "they loved him. And he executed them." On the other side, the defense urged the jury to consider doubt. They argued that no one had seen Grant pull the trigger, that there was no murder weapon recovered, that the absence of DNA made the state's case circumstantial. But as the courtroom watched Grant, he showed no emotion, no tears, no regret, nothing. On July 31, 2019, after several hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The clerk stood, voice firm but heavy. "We the jury find the defendant, Grant Amato, guilty of first-degree murder on all 3 counts." A gasp echoed through the courtroom. Some family friends wept quietly, others simply closed their eyes in grief, and Grant, he barely blinked. At sentencing, Grant faced the death penalty, but in a surprising twist, the jury voted 11-1 in favor of life imprisonment without parole. There would be no appeals, no release. Grant would spend the rest of his life behind bars at the Hardy Correctional Institution in Florida. He now lives in a 6x9 concrete cell, where days blend into nights, and there are no screens, no chats, and no Sylvia, just silence. Chad, Margaret, and Jason Amato are now gone. Their home, once filled with laughter, holidays, and family dinners, has been sold, but their memory lives on. Friends continue to share stories of Chad's corny dad jokes, of Margaret's compassion and faith, of Jason's dedication to his patients and colleagues. They were real people, not just victims, and that's what makes the story so hard to accept. Experts who followed the case called Grant Amato the textbook example of digital delusion. He lived in a fantasy where money, love, and success came through a screen. He crafted a fake identity to impress Sylvia. He chose digital affection over his own family, and when the real world pushed back, he couldn't cope. He chose control over compassion, silence over apology, and murder over shame. In his world, his family had become the enemy of his fantasy. As of today, Grant Amato remains imprisoned in Florida. He doesn't speak to the public. He's not active online. He's just gone. But the questions remain. Can fantasy truly warp the human mind that much? Can obsession over a virtual connection replace reality itself, in the case of Grant Amato? The answer is yes, and 3 innocent people paid the ultimate price for it. Thank you for watching this episode of Red Case Story. The story of the Amato family is more than just a case of true crime. It's a heartbreaking reminder of how isolation, obsession, and fantasy can spiral into unthinkable tragedy. If this story moved you, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts below. And most importantly, check in with your loved ones, because the darkest battles often happen behind the quietest doors. Stay safe, stay alert, and we'll see you in the next case.